right, everyone. I see it's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to call the June 21st,
Recording in progress.
21 Select Board meeting to order. Remind everyone that this is being recorded and via teleconference and Zoom. So the first order of business is to indicate who's present. And so will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo?
Present.
Ms. Ackerman?
Present.
Mr. Johnson? And Mr. Dane?
Present.
And myself, Ms. Bates, present.
Of course. Thank you very much. No doubt Matt will join us shortly, hopefully. And so our first order of business this evening is to welcome our new select board member, Henry Dane, and no stranger to many in town. So welcome, Henry. And as you'll find out later in the meeting, we're anxious to put you to work.
I've already been put to work.
Yeah, no doubt.
To a couple of liaison sessions already, but I want to just start off by thanking the current members of the board and past members of the board who have been very helpful to me in welcoming me and providing me with information and making it a lot easier for me to assume the task that I'm going to have to be engaged in as a member of the board. So I want to thank everybody for that. And I look forward to working with all of you and to working with you and making the town a better place for all of us to live and work in.
Very good. And we look forward to working with you as well. So I also, in addition, want to particularly acknowledge all the seated individual board members who have worked so hard this last year, both on behalf of the select board and the town. And I am reminded that it's our collective effort in terms of responsiveness to the community issues, as well as working in the furtherance of our town goals and select board goals that we can all count on. Among our challenges, I think, is to continue that work, but also when we are engaged in spirited debate from time to time, that once we reach consensus or reach a decision on policy issues that we may vote on, that we then collectively represent the select board. As you have been doing, and no doubt we are up to the task going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn our attention to the election of new select board officers. And do I hear a nomination for chair?
It's my pleasure to nominate Terry Ackerman for chair of select board.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Mr. Dane?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Bates, aye.
That's unanimous, and the former chair so declares. Congratulations, Terry, and we heard the enthusiasm in your voice as you accepted the role. So the next order of business is to elect a clerk, and I would like to nominate Matt Johnson.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, will the clerk, seated clerk at this point, please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Mr. Dane?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
And myself, Ms. Bates, aye.
That's unanimous, and the former chair so declares. So congratulations to you both. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our new chair, Terry Ackerman.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Linda. Yes, as they say in our business, congratulations and condolences. It's going to be a wild year. So thank you board members for having confidence in me, and I hope I can live up to your expectations. And thank you very much, Linda, for all of your help during the busy transition. Really appreciate it. So we'll be able to hit the ground running, which is great. So as you can tell, we have a very busy agenda. Let's start with the consent agenda.
So I can move that we approve the consent agenda.
I have a remark to make on that, and that is the consent agenda includes the town accountant's warrant. And the town accountant's warrant contains on it a payment of funds to my law firm, although not for our services, but with regard to a transaction involving the sale of a home ownership unit in the Emerson building. And therefore, even though I don't think there's any conflict there, I would like to recuse myself from the vote on the warrant because of the presence of that item in the accountant's warrant.
Thank you for that, Henry. So let's split this consent agenda into two motions. The first motion will be to just approve the town accountant warrant. Do I hear a motion for that?
Sure. Move to approve the town accountant's warrants June 10th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye. And I don't know if I call Mr. Dane in this circumstance, I guess.
I will vote present.
Present, thank you. Okay.
Okay.
And then move to approve the minutes of May 10th, May 17th, and May 24th, 2021, and to acknowledge a gift acceptance from accept a gift from the Friends of the Sleepy Hollow through a donation by Mary McGuire Taylor and the family for $10,000 to the cemetery trees account for the replacement and replanting of trees and or bushes near the intersection of Ripley and Bartlett Avenues in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Do you have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. And we thank the Mary McGuire Tyler family for your generous gift. Next, we have the town manager's report.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome, Henry. Congratulations, Terry and Matt. As Terry said, it's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding. I think to be engaged at that level. So I think we're going to have continue the great progress we've made so far. It's a new season, so to speak. It's exciting. So just a couple of quick things on the town manager's report. As I notified the board, I did put out a statement about the Juneteenth holiday. The primary purpose was to notify the community as to why town offices weren't closed on Friday. You know, some other communities were doing different things, but because our bylaw has our holidays in it and the holidays are specified in our collective bargaining agreements, it really limited what we could do. So we'll be making the changes to those. And now that it's a federal holiday, which also happened in the mix of all of this kind of on short notice. Its status as a federal holiday didn't change the prescriptive way our holidays are enumerated, but we will be looking to make those changes through collective bargaining and then also on next year's town meeting warrant. So Juneteenth will be celebrated as a federal holiday here. And then in reviewing it with our DEI advisors, they suggested that adding, a narrative about my own journey that a journey that I think we are all on in some way, shape, or form would maybe be helpful. And so I did a little bit of that as well, and I actually got some nice feedback on it. So it was. I am glad that it's a federal holiday, and I think it really is a great moment for, I think, us as a society. As you know, the governor did sign a bill finally enacted by the legislature to extend the open meeting law provisions, which is why we are here once again on Zoom, and also the outdoor dining. It's worth noting that the outdoor dining, the change that was on the consent calendar to our bylaws for outdoor seating and our parking table made it so outdoor dining could have continued in Concord with just amendments to licensed premises for certain restaurants who wanted to do it, even if the state had not extended it. So we were prepared for that moment, but it is a relief that the state gives restaurateurs really a little more time to figure out what they want to do in terms of offering it on a more permanent basis and amending their liquor license. And so I also put a brief note, as you know, the Concord Free Public Library opens sort of in the middle of May, and it really was, this is a 2 weeks worth of report because we didn't meet last week, so that's why some of this is a little bit older, but they broke a record of almost 1,500 checkouts in the 8 hours of the first day, so there really was a lot of pent-up demand for that, and things seem to be going pretty well over there in terms of being able to serve the public in person again. Programs are starting, and I'll probably have a report at some point in time in the near future about the planned grand reopening, I guess, once the addition is complete. And if any board members are interested in seeing it, I personally have not toured it, but the corporation has extended the offer to provide a tour. So if you're interested, I could certainly line that up with the corporation. The other thing is, just a quick note, we are, MCI Concord is resuming their work release program, which is something that has been very beneficial to the community, but also to the organization. So it's some much needed help. And we've seen in the news a lot about labor shortages, and some of our recruitments, I think, have shown that to be an issue here as well. So having the help of MCI Concord is going to be a great benefit, especially for our grounds crew. And then our water department is in the process of reactivating all of our public water fountains and hydration stations. There's the Economic Vitality Committee is working with primarily our Director of Planning and Land Management, Marsha Rasmussen, to look at what are the barriers to business in Concord as we look at economic recovery. And we had a grant and a consultant on board for a different study that now is that the purpose of that study is kind of lapsed. And so now we're looking at repurposing the grant and that consultant's efforts towards an analysis of our structures and how they either accommodate or inhibit economic vitality. And then, so for White Pond, we've had some blue-green algae blooms. Board of Health, in addition to the Recreation Department, have been putting out notices. It's a hit or miss kind of thing. Some days it's, you go down there and there's a bloom, readily visible, and then a couple of hours later the water is perfectly clear. And so that's something that we're asking people to just keep checking for the availability of the swimming areas, and also be mindful of where they are swimming and look out for the blooms. There's a lot of information, especially in our Board of Health website, about it. But that's something that is kind of beyond our control, but it does impact when people can swim. And so just like I said, we ask for patience and people to make sure that they do their due diligence both before they get on a White Pond and while they're there. And then the last thing is the Summer Solstice Program, which was a effort put together by Concord Together to stimulate retail activity last summer during the pandemic. Was so effective that they decided they wanted to do it again. The flyer was in the packet. So if people are going to be around this summer, you can win some great prizes by getting your Solstice passport and getting it stamped and you go to different retailers. So that's it for my formal report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Stephen. And sign me up. I want to be on the library tour. Questions, Susan?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, Stephen, and it wasn't things you mentioned, but one was, has NAGOG been tested for PFAS and chemicals? I can't remember if you reported on that when you talked about, you mentioned all the town wells had been tested, but I wasn't sure if that had been as well. And
Yeah, sorry.
no, go ahead.
There's been some preliminary testing, but one of the tests, and I don't know, the real test is the finished water.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, because we're still working on our intake, we don't have finished water. And so once the intake project comes online, I'm certain that we'll have PFAS testing there as well.
Great,
one thing to note is open water like that is much less likely to have higher levels. It's what we've seen it mostly, as I think as Alan reported, we've seen it mostly in wells and underground sources, but we will definitely look at that.
Thank you. And then,
I'm sorry, Susan.
no, go ahead, Henry. I have a different.
One thought I have about White Pond is I believe part of the problem is the use of cleaning products that have nitrates in them. And that leach into the ground either through the septic systems or through lawn treatment. And I think we probably could go a long way by giving the people who live around the pond strong incentives to use the appropriate cleaning materials. And I think from a financial point of view, we probably would do better to just give such materials to the people who live around the town than have to deal with the repeated pollution of the pond because of the chemicals that leach into it.
Yeah, I was talking to Kate Hodges about this today. I think there's a pretty long history of analysis of the pond health, and I think Henry, I think you're right. The cleaners, the cleaning supplies, fertilizing the lawns, things like that. Those are factors in it. There's also, I think, runoff issues that continue, even though a lot of efforts have been put into erosion control. And so it's definitely an issue that needs a lot more work on our part to maintain pond health. And it's something that I think is a lot of the conversation has been had already in the past, and I want to learn more about what those conversations were. But I think you're right. We definitely need to think about new approaches.
Okay, Susan,
Yeah, I just had one more question. Do you have any update on the doors in the town hall or or the townhouse? Is that projected still to be about end of July or?
Well, if they arrive when they're supposed to next week, there's a chance it could be the end of July. But when I went over there and talked to the superintendent of the job, if they arrive on July 2nd, it puts us into the holiday weekend at that point. And so they're continuing to work every day to getting it closer. It's getting closer and closer. It looks great. But no, the doors are definitely still at least a week out, and they will obviously, there's a number of them, so they'll take a while to install. And then of course there's flooring that needs to be installed as well.
Thank you.
So I'll provide updates as I get them. Right now we're kind of status quo until the doors arrive.
Thanks.
Thank you, Linda.
So do we have any update on the availability of facilities? I know we were, going to sort of only allow scheduling out for about 30 days. And I just don't know if the traffic is greater than what we had expected, or we can handle it right now.
So we did I think a week or two ago, it was 2 weeks ago, I did put the list of available rooms in my town manager's report. Right. And I think boards and committees know basically who to go to when it's the staff person or the department head for that building or the administrative staff that schedules those rooms. And so I have not personally heard of any issues with getting meetings scheduled in person. I think a number of boards and committees are staying on Zoom. I think in part because of vacation schedules and other things. So I'm not aware of any issues with that yet. And in terms of the meeting rooms at the townhouse, they're going to remain unavailable until the project is complete and everything is moved back to where it's supposed to be. But I will say we do have a couple of rooms, CMLP, public hearing room, and 141 Kais Road are set up for hybrid meetings. But I think, Linda, you and Terry and I talked about this, with the way they're set up as kind of a temporary thing. There's limitations to how the public can really be engaged in that hybrid model. And so we're still working at, we can do it and people can participate at home via Zoom, or certainly be in the meeting at home on Zoom, but it's hard to see everybody else who's there and
Right. We're going to be talking about that in item in a minute.
Sorry. So Linda, to answer your question, a long answer to a short question, I'm not aware of any issues right now with room reservations.
So that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions from the board for the town manager?
Well, on the live meetings, I was somewhat disappointed that this meeting would not be a live meeting.
Right. Excuse me, Henry. We're going to get to that in about less than 1 minute. We're going to item.
I can wait 1 minute.
Okay. Okay. Great. We decided to put a whole item for this and not include it in the town manager's report, so we can have a discussion just about this item. This is a high interest item. Any other questions on any other town manager topics? Okay. So just very briefly on the chair's remarks, as you can tell from this very busy agenda, we have a busy and challenging year ahead, and we're starting really late in the year. We had a late town meeting, so we're going to be plunging right in. And I appreciate everyone's cooperation and being prepared and collaborating. And I'll say more about that when we get to the schedule and the focused meetings. So now we are going to discuss upcoming select board meetings. Should we meet in person, virtual, or a hybrid? And so, as Stephen said, the legislation has been passed allowing us to meet by Zoom or in person. And there's a lot of pros and cons either way. We have had a great deal of citizen participation with Zoom. It is better to see each other live. There's a lot of pros and cons. My first choice personally is a hybrid where we would be able to meet live and the public will have their choice of access. They can come into the building to the live meeting, or they can stay home or be on vacation and watch by Zoom. The problem is technically how close we can get to that, and that's what Stephen was starting to talk about. So I just want to add that I did go to one hybrid meeting already in Concord. The school committee met last Tuesday at Ripley, and I watched from home on Zoom, and I think Linda was there live. So it can be done. The only problem was the sound quality and the picture quality were really not as good. We've become very spoiled, I think, with Zoom. So it was hard to see faces. It was hard to hear. So we have to consider all of these different factors when we're deciding what to do. So with that in mind, we're going to have a discussion about, I understand the town house will open, let's say, sometime in August, for example. And at that point, we'll probably start meeting live every time. So what we want to decide now is, what do we want to do between June 28th, next week, and August, the beginning or middle of August when we move into the townhouse? What are your thoughts? Susan.
Thank you. I like the idea of what you mentioned about the board itself meeting in person, because I think that interaction is different on Zoom than it would be if we were all sitting around the table. But I like the option of having the public, giving them the choice of online or in person. And I, too, the Natural Resources Commission had a hybrid meeting. And I think it went well, but there was one microphone in the middle of the table where the commissioners sat. So but people said there were a number of people in the Zoom audience, and they didn't complain about the sound, but people had to make some minor adjustments. So for a first try, I thought it was quite successful, but I could see where there are technical issues associated with it.
And what building was that?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, what building was that meeting?
Oh, that was on Kai's Road on the first floor in the
Okay.
conference room.
All right. Henry and then Stephen.
As long as we provide accessible and public space, I think it would make sense for us to start the in-person meetings and allow the technology to develop while we have those meetings. In fact, it would be probably a kind of a good test run to actually hold the meetings, and then to see if the technology for the hybrid meetings can develop along the way. Just because we can do Zoom doesn't mean we should, or it's good. There's so much you lose in not being at the same in the same room with other people, especially when a lot of the, what can I say, the body language and all that stuff gets totally lost on Zoom, and anything, and there are so many constraints imposed on us by the open meeting law. I went to, a few days ago, I went to the meeting of the library committee, which I think was their first post-COVID live meeting in the trustees' room of the library. There was nothing electronic there other than the lights in the ceiling. And the meeting, I think everybody found that meeting was very refreshing. I think the other thing is that the board should set an example for getting back to normal for all of the other town boards and activities.
Okay, thank you. Stephen.
Well, I was really just going to take a minute to describe what it would look like. But I don't know, Matt, if you want to comment before that. I was just going to kind of talk through what our meeting would look like if we had done the hybrid that we had set up for, and until we get into the back into townhouse, what they would likely look like. Would people find that helpful?
Yeah.
So basically, there's in I think, Susan, this is probably consistent with what you saw at the NRC. There's really one camera that captures the table where all of the select board members would be sitting, and town manager and Jeremy. We'd be sitting at the table, and we may have our laptops in front of us, but we wouldn't be using Zoom on our computers that are in front of us because of sound spillover, and you've all been in meetings, we've heard potentially some feedback. It can mess with the sound. So and then there'd be one microphone that actually works very well that would pick up the discussion of the board. And then there's a TV. And then the people who are participating via Zoom are on TV. And not everybody at home can see everybody who's there, because we would use the speaker view instead of the gallery view. And so if people were, I think, patient about this new format and kind of manage the expectations about what you can get out of a hybrid meeting with what we have now, then I think we can do it. We're ready to do it now. When we go back to, if we go back to the select board meeting room, the multiple cameras do enable people participating via Zoom to see more of the members up close, because you remember the meetings that you could catch sides of people's faces and a little better view of individual members. But the people at home are still going to be on a TV screen. for the board's view. So it's like I said, we had never done Zoom before, and we adjusted. And so I think what I'm basically saying is there's an adjustment I think that people will need to make in terms of their expectations for hybrid meetings. And as long as people are clear on that, I think they could be an effective tool.
Okay, thank you. Linda and Matt, do you have comments?
Yeah. So first was just to reiterate the comment that I made last time, which is that if we meet in person, it needs to be in the evening, just as a practical matter for my work schedule. I just can't make it during the day. I can carve this out because I can just flip from one meeting to the next, but I can't do the in transit to get to any meeting room. The second is that I think that the real benefit of a hybrid meeting would be if members of a board or committee could participate remotely. I think from the point of view of public participation, that, you know, I think that if we're going to be in person, that a participant from the public should probably be in person as well, and that we can do a passive, you know, viewing live, if you wish, of the meeting, you know, over, as we did before, videotaping of the meetings. That, you know, really, I think if I don't want to, I would rather see a real hybrid if we're doing hybrid, let's say, you know, later in the summer, if people are away or whatever, that we would be able to get a quorum with a remote member, especially on some of these other boards and committees. And that we focus on that benefit as much as you know, just the general public participation. While of course I want to encourage that, it's just the main focus, I think, is being able to have the meeting in the first place.
Thank you, Matt. Let me just respond to that, and then Linda had some comments. So first of all, Matt, when you say the time would have to be evening, what are you talking about? 5, 6, 7, or what?
So normally, actually, it could be as early as 5 most weeks. I mean, next week, there's still this webinar that's going on for the Mass Municipal Association. But,
okay.
You know, after that, it could be as early as 5, but, you know, 5, 6, 7, yeah. But it can't be 4, is what I'm saying. It can't be 4.
All right. So related to that, I was thinking about, after we met the other day, Stephen, I was thinking about CMLP has one big disadvantage for a 4 or 5 or 6 or even 7 o'clock meeting, which is getting through the Rotary. Almost all of us, or all of us, would have to get through that Rotary, and it's a very, very long traffic jam, at least 20 minutes. So that's sort of a disadvantage. If there's a different place like Kai's Road, it might be easier. And then Matt, yes, absolutely. Even before COVID, the law was changed so that a member can participate remotely. That is already allowed. So certainly we can do that, and we should do that. And finally, I just wanted to remark about the participants. Today we have with us by Zoom Carmen Reese, but she would have been here live if we had met live. And next week we have probably Elise Woodward coming, and she'll be out of town, and she has asked to participate by Zoom. So this is going to be a regular feature that sometimes participants will be in town and sometimes they won't, and we will try to get them live as much as we can. Linda.
But I guess that, you know, even though the law was changed, that a member can't be part of a quorum if they're remote.
No, they can. They can. The law has changed in 2018 or 19.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I'd love to get the latest.
There just has to be a quorum present. So there just has to be 3 of you in the room, and then
that's what I meant. So the remote member cannot form the quorum for the committee. Okay, so that's the
But they
thing.
can
I mean, this
vote.
is not so much an issue for, they can vote, but it's not so much an issue for us. We're likely to have 3 people in the room. But for other boards, town boards and committees, that could be a serious issue.
Okay,
And that's why I think we should still seek to find a way to, to do hybrid meetings and to support legislation that
okay,
enables them.
all right.
So
Linda.
So I guess the question I have is, we saw the setup at the school meeting last week where the screen is behind the stationary table for the, in this case, the school committee members. So I guess my question is, where would the screen be at CMLP as well as at KAIS? And the reason I'm asking this question is the select board members, the school committee members with that kind of setup and there was one school committee member who was joining them by Zoom. And so, they had to keep turning around in order to see, have discussions with each other. And it was, and there were also hearing issues, as others have pointed out. So do we know how the mechanics of that would work in these 2 settings?
In Kai's Road, it was set up, the commissioners were at the
Side.
table on the far side of the road, but the screen that's in the corner that normally they project, and they did project when people had presentations with, drawings and so forth. Those were it was like a screen share, but when there weren't, it looked like our screen now with all of the little boxes with all the
So that's
people
a
on
little easier to manage.
Yeah, it was visible from the board's perspective.
Okay,
Yeah, I think for CMLP, it would be off. They just got a larger TV, and I haven't seen it set up, but it would be probably off to the side. We would set the room up long ways, and the camera would be at the far end, like we come into the room, and so it would be able to capture not only the board at the table, but the backs of the heads of the people in attendance. But if they got up to speak, it would capture, basically who they are and what they're saying. In terms of the select board meeting room, we may need to rethink about the orientation of that, because as you know, the TV screens one's behind and the other one's up above. And we may need to look at the orientation of that room, or maybe transition into doing meetings on a more regular basis in the town, in the hearing room.
yes. I think we should try to get the sound working in that big hearing room. That would be really good.
Yep.
Because routinely that select board room was overpacked and standing room only. And okay, so I think we've had a good discussion about this. And what I think I'm hearing is that there's a lot of support for live meetings. And I have an idea then that I want to see what you guys think, that we try next week, the 28th, to do a live meeting, understanding, that the technology is not going to be perfect. We'll do the best we can. And let's see how it goes. And then we can go from there. What are your thoughts on that? Does anybody see a problem with that or like that idea? Or
And we're hoping for KAIS Road.
yes, I would really prefer not to go through. Why should everyone go through that traffic jam? But, let's see what we can do.
And the time again?
Well, we've agreed at a past meeting that it was going to be at 5:00 because of this seminar.
Which ends at 5:00.
Right.
So should we do 5:30 or?
We should make the time be so it will accommodate all the members of the board.
Right. Okay. Should we go for 6:00? Is that better?
It doesn't matter. I think I can make 5:30, that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
But it's up to you. You know, of course, then depending on the length of the meeting, we might have a very late dinner.
yeah, right. Okay, well, it'll be 5:30 or 6. If someone has a strong preference, send me an email and we will figure it out. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing. Grant of location petition from Comcast to install approximately 262 feet of coaxial cable. So we're going to open the public hearing. I think I saw Justin Richardson here. Are you representing
Shall I move to open the public hearing?
Yeah, I just want to see who's here first. Justin.
Yes, I'm representing engineering, Justin Richardson.
Okay, great. And who is here from Comcast?
Terry, usually Greg Franks, who's the government affairs person for Comcast, would be in attendance. I'm not seeing him here. He was invited, of course, but I'm not seeing him here.
Right.
I'm not sure if Justin speaks to the application there.
Okay, well, I'm going to suggest then, that's why I didn't want to move to open it yet, because I didn't see him here. Let's do the number 9 first, and maybe he will come by then. So this one, Justin, I guess, again, you're representing the town. And Mary Mulroney, I think I saw here from National Grid. Is that right?
Yes, good evening.
Okay, so if you want to move to open the public hearing, Matt, for number.
Move to open the public hearing?
Right.
Yeah, I move to open the public hearing.
I think you have to read.
And so, all right. I thought that just for this, we only read it all out when we grant when we approve the petition.
All right. All right.
And then we'll move to close the public hearing. Susan, is that correct? Sorry, we're breaking in a new.
Yeah, we're trying to learn this.
I think just because we flipped the
Right.
order, you should probably just say it's for the National Grid application as opposed to the Comcast.
Okay, sure. Okay, move to open the public hearing, the petition of National Grid to relay gas line on Hubbard Street from Thoreau to Walden Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Linda, I think you were on mute. Okay. Okay.
So I'll call the roll.
Right.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo. I think are you on mute?
Aye.
And myself, Mr. Johnson, aye. Hearing is now.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. So Mary and Justin, Mary, do you want to go first?
Sure. National Grid respectfully requests your consent to install a relay approximately 1,850 feet of 2-inch coated steel to replace that and 60 feet of 2-inch plastic dated back to 2010 with 1,910 feet of 4-inch plastic in Hubbard Street from Thoreau to Walden. The total installation is 1,910 feet of 4-inch plastic.
Okay. Thank you. And Justin, do you have some comments?
Yes, we prepared a memo for the board, which is typical. I can go through all of them if you would like, or I didn't think so. So yes, engineering has reviewed the plans and would recommend approval with the conditions that we defined in the memorandum.
Right. They look like standard conditions. Is there anything specific to this project?
They're mostly standard conditions related to separations from other utilities, and then the standards for the DTE 9822. But they are standard conditions.
Okay. Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Matt?
So I assume we're doing this in coordination with the Complete Streets project that's going on Hubbard Street. That's the timing, the reasoning behind the timing of these and the location. Yeah.
That is correct. We informed National Grid of our plan to basically redo Hubbard Street, and they informed us that they had an older main in that street, so they wanted to replace it before we did the repair to the street.
And then I'm just curious, just from a point of view of town coordination, what about the CMLP and town water and sewer? I mean, there were no other infrastructural systems that were affected, or is that just not subject to the same kind of hearings?
So I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that CMLP would have to do a grant of location request to us, to you, and we would review it. But as far they had no plans to, and neither did water and sewer, to do any construction in Hubbard Street. Their existing sewer, I believe that they cambered it and it was in good working condition, and their water main, they seem to believe that it's fine.
Okay, and then electrical service is already underground in this area? This may be for the town manager more than.
I believe that it is. I think there are poles still out there, but I think it's Verizon that's still on the poles.
I mean, wouldn't this be a great opportunity to drop that underground too? I mean, this seems like one of those projects where we could get rid of those poles.
Unfortunately, I believe that that decision comes down to Verizon, and they would be the ones funding it as well. So I can't force them to do that.
Okay, other questions from the board?
Well, we might not be able to force them, but we might be able to negotiate with them in order to get it done, including if we want to get rid of the poles and the overhead wires, and we're laying the conduit anyway under the road, is to just offer to put their telephone lines and communications lines in conduit that we were already running under the street.
We have sent emails to them informing them that they are the only utility left on the poles. We've tried.
Okay.
I mean, I think, and Justin, I don't know if I haven't seen the plans in a while, but we will often, when we are working underground, install extra duct bank. And so I think if Verizon was motivated to do it, we could certainly make duct bank available for them to run their lines and make it easy for them. But they've got it's not just the wires and the poles, it's the connections to the buildings that have to be moved down underground, and it's expensive and complicated, and I think we'd all love to see that happen. But as Justin noted, we can't really force them to do it, but we certainly can do things like make duct available for them. And I think I don't know if we have that in the plans, but we could certainly add that.
Yeah, we don't currently have that in the plans right now. The only duct bank that's getting run is for the other grant of location for Comcast, and that's just their small portion. I know that CMLP did work on Hubbard Street. It predated me being here, so I'm not sure what their spare capacity is right now, but it's something we can check into.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Are there questions from the public? Seeing none, I guess I'll take a motion to close the public.
Move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay. Is there any further discussion by the select board? Okay, then we're ready for a motion.
Okay, move to approve the grant of location petition from Comcast to install approximately 200, this is move to approve the petition from National Grid to relay approximately 1,850 feet of 2-inch CS and 60 feet of 2-inch PL 60 PSI gas main with 160 feet of new 4-inch PL 60 PSI in Hubbard Street from Thoreau Street to Walden Street, subject to the conditions recommended in the Concord Public Works report to the Select Board dated May 27th, 2021.
Did I?
Second.
Second, okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure.
Excuse me, did I hear Mary Mulroney say that it was 1,910 feet?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So we've just, okay, so I have to change that, amend that to be 110 feet of new 4-inch PL 60 PSI pipe. Okay? Does or do I need to restate the entire motion?
Well, it's the number you're reading.
Is it 1,850 feet of the 2-inch?
It's 1,850 feet of 2-inch and an additional 60 feet of 2-inch plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be
1,900. I had 1,960 feet in the draft motion we had. So it's 1,910 feet of 4-inch?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I have to restate this whole motion. So move to approve the petition from National Grid to relay approximately 1,850 feet of 2-inch CS and 60 feet of 2-inch PL 60 PSI gas main with 1,910 feet of new 4-inch PL 60 PSI in Hubbard Street from Thoreau Street to Walden Street, subject to the conditions recommended in the Concord Public Works report to the Select Board dated May 27th, 2021.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for catching that, Linda. Thank you for reading it again, Matt. Okay, we're ready for a vote.
Go ahead. So, Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay, thank you. Now, going back to item 8, the petition for Comcast.
Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mary.
And congratulations on your new positions. And I hope the others stay on. They've been very helpful to me in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so returning to item 8, is anyone here from Comcast? See anybody? What's the board's pleasure? Do we want to have this public hearing, or do you want to put this off till next week when we can get someone here from Comcast?
I guess the question's for the town manager or the engineer. Does this get in the way of progress on this project?
I don't think so if it's got next week's agenda.
Okay.
Do we normally require somebody to be present at the public hearing?
It's not required, but if a board member has some concerns or questions that they want to ask Comcast, then I know we had a restaurant at one point where we had some questions and that new manager wasn't here to answer the questions, so we put it off till they could be here. So it's really up to the board.
The only thing, Terry, I think the only thing I'd point out is, and I'm certainly no defender of Comcast, and they should be here. If they have a grant of location on our agenda, they ought to be here, and that frustrates me greatly. Justin knows dealing with utility companies is very very difficult at times. Yep. But with summer schedules and people's availability and things like that, I'd hate to risk if there are questions, we 100% should put it off. But if there aren't, I'd hate to risk delaying the project because of, like I said, vacation schedules and other things. That's my
Right.
point.
Right, well said, right. Okay, Susan,
I'm
Lynn,
okay with proceeding.
Susan's ready to proceed. Henry, what do you think? Henry, do you want to
Yeah.
proceed?
Yes, in fact, I would ask, I assume the statute requires the board itself to hold these hearings, and this is not something that we can delegate to, say, the town manager or to the administrative level or the Department of Public
No.
Works.
Right, we're not going to delegate it. We're either going to hear it tonight.
I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about in general, when we have this series of these hearings on things that we know almost nothing about and have to make decisions about them, and I assume we only do it because we have to.
Mhm. So the question is, since the Comcast representative is not here, whether you want to have the public hearing tonight or,
I have no problem with that.
okay, Linda,
No, I don't either.
Matt?
No, I'd rather get past it. It's routine.
Okay, all right, then we'll have a motion to open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing for a grant of location petition for Comcast.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay,
Okay, I'll call the roll. Ms. Ackerman,
aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
I
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and Mr. Johnson, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Richardson, any particular comments?
No, just that we reviewed their application and their plans, and it appears to comply with all of our requirements related to spacing for other utilities and with the project that we mentioned related to the new construction on Hubbard Street.
Okay, any questions from the board members? Linda?
I would just comment to Justin, and we probably have no control over this, but I couldn't help but notice that the vaults come from California. Could they come from any further location? Does that ever come up in conversation?
Typically, a contractor would just find the cheapest that still meets the specification for the road box. So they may come from California. That might be where they are specifically constructed. I don't know.
And they're made of a material that gets peeled off by the sidewalk snow plows, pretty generally too, and they become dangerous and ugly.
Okay. Are there questions from the public?
Yes, please. Carlin Reed.
Carlin Reed.
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Whitsand. Justin, did you do a site walk with Comcast on this application? And if so, what was the result?
On this one, I did not perform a site walk. Patrick Wood, who is part of the engineering division, I believe did. He's on the call as well. Patrick, if you're there, did you perform a site walk with Comcast?
Hi, Carlin. Yes, we did.
And the results were what?
Well, it was a pretty standard site walk. We were in front of the post office and the church to look at their proposed locations. We took a look at the existing utility poles where they have their overhead wires, and he showed me where they wanted to install a new, not a new vault, but there's an existing vault on the second to last utility pole. They're going to utilize that, trench out to the middle of the street, just like they have shown on the plan, swing around and come near the last utility pole on the church side. We looked at that location as well. We talked about having the ability to put these vaults possibly in the grass so they're not in the sidewalk. And unfortunately for that location, there wasn't a good spot for it because of just site constraints. And then we walked over to the other side of the street, the post office side, to look at where their second new vault is proposed. And I think we decided that that one could be placed in the grass strip where it wouldn't interfere with the existing concrete sidewalk. And then we talked about the grant of location hearing.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions from the public? Okay, we'll have a,
Yes, please.
oh, Pamela.
Is the town fiber optic cable buried there too?
Patrick?
I believe the fiber optics are buried. Yes.
Also, I think members of the public should announce their address and their full name.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green, Unit 4. Thank you.
Okay, so the question was, is fiber optic cable buried? And the answer is yes, it is there. Okay. Any other questions from the public? Okay. We will have a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second,
Okay.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay, any further discussion from the select board? All right, seeing none, we're ready for a motion.
Move to approve the grant of location petition from Comcast to install approximately 262 feet of coaxial cable and 3-inch PVC conduit in Hubbard Street and 2 new vaults within the sidewalks in front of number 54 and number 34 Walden Street, subject to the conditions recommended in the Concord Public Works report to the Select Board dated June 1st, 2021.
Second,
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Richardson and Mr. Wood. And I just want to request that whoever notifies Comcast, would you please let them know that we would prefer if they could attend next time.
Well, in fact, like a material thing was, for example, National Grid picked up that there was an error in our original motion. So
Right.
that's the kind of thing that at a very minimum, their presence could fix.
Sure. Yeah, we will. We'll inform them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Okay, we will now move on to item 10, debriefing from town meeting. And we have here our moderator, Carmen Reese. And before Carmen speaks, I just really want to thank her for her wonderful leadership. We had a fabulous town meeting where everyone who wanted to speak could speak, and yet we finished in one afternoon, and that's the second time. And I don't think the public probably knows how much behind the scenes planning, Carmen, that you had to do to accomplish that. So thank you so much for your efforts, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Terry. And I will say that it takes a village, and nobody knows how many hours of overtime Chris Carmody worked. So, and that goes for Ryan Orr too. So I had plenty of help, and I was grateful for all of it. So town meeting debrief. We did, in fact, finish town meeting in a single afternoon in 2.5 hours, which was faster than last year, actually. We handled 43 articles. 5 of them were part of an omnibus motion for no action. 25 of them were on the consent calendar, and we had full deliberation, including amendments on 13 articles. We had 412 voters come for town meeting, which is probably about average for the for first night attendance at town meeting in ordinary times. That's not what we have when we have special interest items. We can get as many as 1,000 or more people in those circumstances, but this was a perfectly fine showing in terms of the number of folks who came for town meeting. The day was hot. It was difficult to sit there in the sun for that long. People stuck it out. And I was very grateful to Fire Chief Judge for giving us a reminder to stay hydrated and not to begin dropping like flies from heat exhaustion. So that was very welcome. I did do a 6-question exit survey of voters, and out of the 412 voters who were there, we received 147 responses, so that's a little more than a third, which is not too bad. It's my hope that we'll be able to put this survey online so that we can perhaps net some additional responses as well by folks who might find it on the website. And I'll just run briefly through the questions that I asked, because very much wanted to know what people thought about our pandemic measures. It's an ill wind indeed that blows no good, and there may be some measures that we undertook in the midst of the pandemic that people would actually like to continue. So that was part of my aim in asking these questions, was to find out what people thought. So the first question was whether voters felt we should continue with a one-day streamlined Sunday afternoon format for annual town meeting. 70% of people who responded felt yes. Second question was whether we ought to continue with the more robust use of the consent calendar that we had this year and last. And 86% of the respondents said yes. The third question was whether we ought to continue the 1-minute time limit. And 81% of people responding said yes. And this one is interesting. The question 4 was, should we continue the format of having all of the miscellaneous paper handouts combined in a single booklet, as opposed to having different piles of paper? And 94% of people said yes, keep doing that. The fifth question was whether we ought to continue to have written as opposed to spoken tributes to outgoing elected and appointed officials. And 80% of respondents felt that that was a good thing. And I had one comment that actually really appreciated the written tributes because it was something that people could linger over and have a look at and take away with them from the meeting. And they thought that that was actually nicer than the oral tributes that were delivered. And then finally, the sixth question was whether or not we should continue with dispensing with oral or visual presentations on articles and asking voters to rely on the pre-town meeting hearings, either by watching those in person or watching them in the recorded format in which they're available on the website. And slightly over half of the respondents thought that that should continue. But that one also attracted a number of comments from folks who thought that it was really not a good idea, that there was a lot of concern that people didn't completely understand what they were voting on. And even there was one individual who commented that, even with the best of intentions, I personally just could not get myself to the website to watch the hearings. And so I didn't feel completely informed. I invited people, in addition to those questions, to let me know in their written comments on the survey whether they liked being outdoors. And we had 17 folks out of those 147 say that, yes, they really liked being outdoors. But there were several qualifications, such as, yes, but only if it's under 70 degrees. Yes, but only if there's more shade. Yes, but only if it's not on artificial turf. Yes, but only if it's not in June. I would say that there is a feeling by people that they'd like to return to being indoors. But I do think that people liked the one-day format. There were some folks who commented that they had small kids and getting to 2, 3, 4 nights of town meeting was simply never going to happen for them, but they could watch hearings and come to an afternoon meeting, and that could work. And they felt that that was much better for people in their position. There were other people who felt that we're trying to do too much in an afternoon and that we should spread it over perhaps 2 days instead of 1 day. And as is almost always the case, we have both ends of the bell curve represented in comments that come from the public, where at the one end, there are some people who feel that town meeting is no longer representative of the town because not enough people come and we should go to representative town meeting. And folks at the other end who feel that everyone should be able to participate and therefore town meeting should be held virtually so that everybody could participate from wherever they were. And of course, we all know that we have statutory disability on that particular issue. Even if we could figure out technologically how to make it work. So that's kind of the rundown. And so the message that I'm taking, and I should say also there were some comments about the use of the consent calendar. There were some qualified yeses. Yes, but maybe not the Community Preservation Act appropriations. And yes, but let's not compromise too much the deliberative quality of our town meeting by putting too much on the consent calendar. So it's kind of a qualified yes with reservation, I would say, from some folks about how much goes on the consent calendar. I didn't ask about 5 versus 10 people to pull an item off the consent calendar. I would plan to go back to 5, and I think that that's an excellent safety hatch for folks who feel that something on the consent calendar really needs the full deliberation of the meeting. So the lessons for me here, I think, are that going forward, I would continue to include more in the consent calendar based on what we hear at the hearings, and but keep that procedure of 5 people being able to, any 5 voters being able to pull anything they want off the consent calendar for full deliberation. The 1 minute time limit. There were a couple of comments that, well, maybe not 2 minutes, but one seemed maybe a little short, maybe 1.5 minutes. So that is actually a kind of obvious compromise position, even though 81% of people who responded liked that 1 minute time limit. And I don't know how all of you felt, but I did feel like we had a pretty robust conversation on the articles that people wished to talk about, with each of them having a minute to speak. But I might think about experimenting with a 90-second, 1.5 minute time limit to see how that works for people a little longer, but not the whole 2 minutes. And I think I would be delighted to continue with the written versus spoken tributes and having people stand for recognition and a round of applause. It's a nice moment to have all those folks who have served us stand up and together receive a round of applause. So I would like to continue having the honored citizen stand and be recognized at annual town meeting, because that's a thing we haven't done in the past, that we did this year and last because of the pandemic and the inability to recognize that person at an in-person ceremony or in our various holiday observations. But I think it's a nice thing to include at annual town meeting. And then finally, I agree with the commentators that it'd be good to go back to oral and visual presentations on the articles that we're going to have full deliberation on. And I also agree with the comments that I received, and there were several of them that suggested don't just be a little more vigorous with the time restrictions on those oral and visual presentations, and don't let anybody, including elected officials, overrun their time limits. So you can consider that as a shot across the bow if you like, but I will take that to heart when we get to our next town meeting. So happy to answer any questions, but those are the lessons I took away from this year's town meeting. And boy, I'm really hopeful that with our excellent vaccination rate here in town and in our state, and in our region generally, that we'll be able to continue opening, stay opened, and have no difficulty having an in-person annual town meeting next year.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Questions and comments from the board?
Just again, our thanks for an incredible job. Thanks, Carmen.
Henry.
I think Matt was first.
Oh, Matt, okay.
He's in the corner over there.
I saw your hand first, Henry, but.
Okay. Well, assuming we go back to April timeframes for town meeting, that makes it a little more difficult to do outdoor. So I imagine we're moving back to a more that type of cadence, or are we going to continue to have these things right at the end of the fiscal year? That's one question. The other is that I'd say it is pretty important to do the presentations. I think that especially when it comes to the core operations of the town, it's the one opportunity that citizens really, the citizenry as a whole, has the opportunity to see things. And I've really been taken by public works presentations, when that's been provided. And so I think that those we should consider to be important to continue. And so if we could do, aspire to 2 nights or something like that, that would be less than we used to spend, more aggressive on the consent calendar, more aggressive on timing. I like the 90 seconds. When I tried to do the 1 minute, I was succinct as possible. It still ran over by 3 or 4 seconds. And the audio system in the stadium was terrible. When you stood at the microphone, there was an echo that came about half a second after each word. And it was just so distracting. I mean, I'm not usually a, shy public speaker, but I found it just almost unbearable and really hard to get my words out. I don't know if other speakers encountered that, but wow, it was tough.
May I, Terry?
Yeah, sure.
So on that last point first, I'm so sorry to hear that. And, we did do a trial run of the audio system a few days before town meeting, and it seemed okay when we did the trial run. So I'm really sorry about that. And honestly, last year, one of the things that folks commented on was how good the audio system was. So I'm really not sure what happened.
It was easy to hear people. And I was surprised. It didn't seem like other people were distracted. They got their points across, but wow. I don't know, maybe it's the resonance of my voice, something, I don't know, but.
Well, maybe it was your microphone. That's a possibility.
Yeah, in the middle.
Yeah. So on the question of how many nights, and on the question of the schedule cadence for town meeting, that's really a select board decision. And we can certainly go back to April if that's what you wish to do. my sense is that the budget units really liked having a little extra time, and that it may be uncomfortable to push the date all the way into June because that's uncomfortably close to the end of the fiscal year. But May is probably a pretty good month, and people were less likely to be in. We have had snowstorms in April, so we're a lot less likely to be thrown off from our chosen dates in May than we are in April. And budget units would have that much additional time. We're still not likely to run into high school graduation or school vacation. And most people are not yet gone on their summer vacations. I think this year we already had some people gone in June because we were a week after high school graduation, and I think there were some families who just got out of town as soon as school was done. I would suggest that the board think hard about May as a likely place, and it would be important, I think, to try and coordinate the town elections with that town meeting schedule. I think it's very tough for people to be elected 60 or 90 days in front of town meeting and then hang around until until town meeting happens and they're ready to take office. It's odd for the appointed folks as well to have uneven terms. But those would be my thoughts on the schedule. And then if you want to schedule it for a Sunday afternoon to allow us to do a marathon session on Sunday and then have a carryover on the Monday evening for whatever we haven't finished, that's certainly an option. It's also an option to go back to the traditional Monday night and try to keep it to 2 or 3 nights with the more robust use of the consent calendar and better streamlining in terms of written tributes versus spoken tributes and things like that. But there's still things that have to happen every night. We still are going to hear emergency procedures every night. We still are going to have to swear the tellers. There's a bunch of things that still are preliminaries that have to happen. There is an economy of scale, if you will, in trying to do things in a single session.
Okay, thank you. I understand we'll be working on a calendar for the next town meeting, I guess around September. So we'll be discussing this, I'm sure, between now and then, because once we set the date of town meeting, everything else follows, including hopefully the election. So other comments? Linda, Susan, Henry?
The only thing I would say is that getting a survey of the people at the town meeting that was 30% of those was an awfully good response rate. Mm-hmm. Typically, the percentages are much lower. And these, of course, these are the 412 are the true believers. And it looks like the results of that poll with them is pretty much across the board. Less is more. And for the other 1,000 or 2 people who didn't come, I guess it's even less is more as far as they're concerned. But, I don't think we have to take it all. I mean, of course we take it seriously, but I think we also take, a leadership role in preserving the traditions of the town. And that I think that town meeting is terribly important. And again, with the COVID restrictions, and even though a lot of people were there outdoors in the same place, they were still, 10 feet apart. And I think it's really important to try to make town meeting as social an event as possible so that people who are interested in affairs of the town have at least one place every year that they get together. Now that we don't have a dump where everybody goes on Saturday morning, at least we have a town meeting, and I'd like to see people go there, and I'd like to see it be in an environment where people can circulate, as, for instance, as we had it in the high school gym, where there was a lot of room for socializing, at least outside of the hall. unlike the auditorium where people are confined to their seats and can't easily get up and talk with each other. So I think it's something that we ought to really foster in terms of the social and political values that it brings to the town.
Okay, thank you. Susan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think that we have the opportunity of doing that melding of what we've learned for the past two town meetings and going forward. And I like the idea of starting on a Sunday afternoon and hopefully accomplishing a great deal of the business, which addresses the issue brought up by, as we try to get more people involved, especially people with family and young children, that seems to be a better time. So, and then, start on a Sunday indoors and then continue to Monday if possible and figure out a date and back it up from there.
Yep. Stephen, briefly, because we have a real lot of things to do tonight. Yeah.
Just in terms of the timing, I think late April, early May is probably a sweet spot. There's a certain rhythm to municipal business, especially with the budget. So I think, I wouldn't say mid-May to late May, but certainly earlier in the month is an option. And the other thing I just want to say is add my voice to the compliments to the moderator. Not only does she put in a tremendous amount of work, but Carmen, you're very collaborative, and you ask us for a lot of input, and you take that input and use that to influence your decision making, and it really makes all of us feel like we're a part of something with the way you approach it as kind of a teamwork approach. So it makes it easy for us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's great to have a team, I have to say.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you. So before you leave, Carmen, there's one more part to the town meeting debrief. I think we need to briefly go over what the select board needs to do for follow-up items. And on my list, I have Article 41 that we're going to be writing a charge and appointing a citizen committee. And also, Article 7 was not moved on the personnel board, but again, we're going to be having a citizen committee and reaching out to the department and the committee that put together this article. Article 19, I believe we have to go to the legislature to work on that senior legislation. And have I forgotten anything? Are there any other follow-up items that anybody remembers that the select board needs to do?
That feels like the list to me, but let me just take a quick look.
And while you're doing that, let me make a brief comment about Article 7 and 41. What I think we need to do is, for example, Susan, you're proposed as liaison for the Personnel Board and for this Citizen Committee for Article 7. If you could talk with both the board and the HR director and the citizens who brought that forward and get all of their input and draft us up a charge that this board can discuss. And I will do the same for Article 41 about the broadband and bring it to a future meeting.
I'll do that.
I'm sorry, Terry, did you mention Article 31?
No, I forgot.
Okay, so Article 31 involves home rule legislation as well. So you will need to be in touch with the legislative delegation at the State House to get that moved forward as well.
Is that the fossil fuel one?
It is, yes.
Okay, great.
And let's see, and the Article 40, I think that maybe is, that was the neonicotinoids
Yes.
with respect to new town leases on town land. So that will be I think some work for the NRC, and I'm not sure who else leases property. I think there's some school property actually that is leased up by on Strawberry Hill Road that the NRC may handle. But anyway, that may be, in any event, that may be, I think, the town manager's job to just make sure that administratively those leases get changed, and that happens going forward.
Right. Thank you.
Those are the only additions that I would note.
Thank you for those reminders. Great. Okay, thanks again, Carmen. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon to plan the next calendar already. And also, we may be having a special town meeting for the middle school. So we may be back with you. It might be a good trial for an indoor meeting with 90 minutes and all of that. So
yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to wait till September to set the calendar for next year. Probably the sooner the better for setting the calendar, both so that you can, the school does things way in advance in terms of their space. So if you want to book space in high school and so on, the more notice you can give them, the better. The same for Kari with respect to trying to plan the municipal elections and so forth.
Good point. So, Stephen, I'll look to you for as soon as your staff is ready to discuss the calendar, we will get that done.
Okay.
Hey, thank you again, Carmen. Now we're going to move into the next item, which might be brief. This is the confirming the summer meeting schedule. And very briefly, my idea on this is to combine 2 regular meetings per month plus 1 in-depth kind of focused meeting and 1 break per month during the summer, so we can have some rest and relaxation. So on the one hand, we have a lot to accomplish, and we have some really in-depth topics, but we also need to take some rest and relaxation during the summer. So this schedule is my proposal. Does anyone have some comments? This is the second time you're seeing the dates. And we're going to be discussing the potential of focused meetings in a minute. But first, let's just talk about the dates, and then we'll talk about the times. Is everyone all right with the dates?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm kind of surprised that there are 3 meetings in August. You're talking about rest and relaxation. I mean, has the select board ever met 3 times in August?
Well, one reason I did that was because there are 5 Mondays, I think, in August. So I think we get away with having 2 breaks. And I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me, but
yeah, we have 3 weeks in a row that we meet. And then there's one at the beginning, one at the end of the month.
right. Oh, thank you, Jeremy. So we can change that around. If
I mean, I'm just curious, like,
Right.
if we have a lot to do, we have had, regular weekly meetings the past year, but that's
Right.
very unusual for the select board.
Right.
And
I
so,
feel the need to really catch up because it's so late in the year that we're starting. I'm sure you've seen the list of focused meetings that is going to be our next item. I just feel that we have so much to do, but it's possible that this board will be so efficient that we can cancel a meeting, which would be wonderful. But I also think right now, like I timed out what I thought was going to happen for this meeting. And so far we're pretty much on time. But now we're starting to run a little late. So even this meeting, I think these meetings are going to run at least 2, if not 3 or 3.5 hours, which is really pretty long. I don't think they should run more than 3 hours if we can help it. So What I'd like to do is try to be so efficient that we can cancel some of these meetings. But that might be overly optimistic.
Okay.
So the only other thing, I hear there's a lot to do, and I agree with you in terms of what you've laid out. It's a little difficult, especially I do think we need a break, having met every week for a year and a half now, some of us. It's difficult, especially in the summer, to cancel a meeting as opposed to being able to plan for it, just because people want to get away or they have other plans. So I would just add that to the mix.
Right. Okay. Well, why don't we see how much we can get done today and next Monday, and then the following week we have a break. And if we're doing really well, maybe we can take another look and cancel another meeting in July or August. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I would just keep in mind that August 16th, perhaps, or even better, the August 23rd, that would just give a real break. But there may be kind of operational things that we have to do that would not allow us to take 3 weeks off.
Right. There's a warrant every 2 weeks and other business every 2 weeks, but I get the idea. So that's good. So let's talk about the times. It sounds like from our previous discussion that we should plan on maybe a 6 or 7 o'clock meeting, or I don't know. What board members want to do for the time of meetings?
Well, seeing that they may be 3 hours long, I think that you either need to have an early dinner or plan for a late dinner, right? And the traditional time was either 6:30 or 7.
Right.
And I think that was with that idea of the eat something and then have the meeting.
That might work. 6:30, right? Susan?
Yeah, I was going to say either like 6:30 works. I was going to suggest 6, but I'm good with 6:30, so you can grab something to eat ahead of time and still it not be 10 o'clock when you're finishing.
Okay. Linda?
If we found out that Kais Road was not available on the meeting nights, would that change how we're thinking about this?
Not to me. If we have to go to CMLP, I've thought through this. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, they're all at the road. That's the time the Rotary is jammed. You have to get there before 3 or not till like 8.
Well, you could go out, Lowell Road and cut over Barrett's Mill and up Strawberry Hill and come out.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
That's the one workaround.
Or Lawsburg Road and all that.
So I did find out that Kais Road is available for next Monday. So it is
wonderful. Let's try that out. All right. How about this? Why don't we try next week at 6:30 at Kais Road for the 28th? Let's see how that live meeting goes. And then if it goes well, we'll have all the other meetings at Kais Road if it's available at 6:30. And if it's not going well, we'll make some changes.
One thing that I found quite effective in running meetings is it really works to have an ending time. In other words, you tell your people that this meeting will be over at 9 o'clock. Even if you're in the middle of a sentence, we're going to put it over till next week, and it makes people a lot more efficient,
right,
using the time that's available.
Okay, yes, good idea. We will do that. Good. So tonight we are going to try and finish sometime before 8 o'clock. So, okay, let's move on to number 12, the focused meetings. So I just want to very quickly say a very brief word about what this is all about. And it turned out I'm reading a book by Elizabeth Warren that just came out in 2021. It's called Persist. I'm just going to read 2 sentences from it because it exactly said what these focus meetings are about. First, we highlight a problem and try out ideas for solutions. We bring people together in a concerted and collaborative effort to move our community's plans and policies to a better place. So in other words, it's about a brainstorming, a collaboration with all the stakeholders on a specific issue. So Jeremy, if you could share the screen for number 12. I want to hear the board's thoughts, but let me just say that I tried to put these in groups. So the first 3, I think we have to get done relatively quickly. And for example, the middle school, what I'm envisioning for this is all the stakeholders are present and we have a brainstorming, which means no idea is stupid. And we really think through, how are we going to pay for this school? Not only through the traditional tax bill, but what are all the other ideas? And which ones might have support politically? Which ones are too crazy that we can't do? But let's get them on the table. And then at that same meeting, we can also maybe talk a little bit about the upcoming special town meeting and take a look at an update of the schematic design if it's ready. Another one I want to give you an example for is in autumn, the transportation meeting. So my idea here is to give the Transportation Advisory Committee between now and autumn, a few more months to come to us with some recommendations on things like Junction Park, Reformatory Branch Trail, public transportation, like Crosstown Connect, complete streets, and let them come in with their ideas. And then the board can have a rigorous discussion, a robust debate, and decide how we're going to move forward on these transportation ideas. There is a heading, the second to bottom heading called Try to Do at a Regular Select Board Meeting, but may need focused meeting. And for example, I want to talk about, well, we talked a little bit about the first one tonight, so that's good. And the second one, the Capital Planning Task Force, I have invited Elise Woodward to come next week. And we will start discussing this, and hopefully we will get far enough that we won't need an entire focused meeting on that topic. Okay, let me stop there and get your ideas on these focused meetings. Susan.
I think it's a really good idea to have a chunk of time to really dig a little deeper on and be a little broader on some of these big issues. And 2229 Main Street is enormous. I would like if we could move the re-examine APP 10, if it could be a little bit sooner, only because we continue to have or I do with the committees I'm liaison for, continue to have vacancies on committees. And the issue of people possibly serving on more than one committee, I think deserves discussion, given the number of vacancies that we have and kind of continue to have. So that's my only comment on content, but I'm very much in favor of the concept.
Okay, thank you. Linda, were you trying to speak? You're on mute.
So, yeah, I agree with Susan and others that it's nice to have some focus time on specific items. You know, I was also going to recommend, but from a different point of view, moving up the streamlining committees discussion in addition to re-examining AP 10, moving that up earlier, because I think we keep circling around this year after year, but not tackling it.
Mhm.
And, you know, if we can, and it's also becoming a real drain on staff resources in terms of being able to staff all these committees. And so maybe if we can see some synergies or see some committees that no longer need to exist in isolation, that will also help the attendance in the vacancies.
Good. Okay. So we can certainly move that one up to, let's say, autumn. You know, as soon as we get done with these top three, we could probably tackle it. Matt and Henry, do you have comments?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's hard to separate this out from FY22 goals. I mean, in that, you know, you spend a lot of time on these topics in focused meetings, and that's effectively what we're doing. So we will have goals, but they'll clearly have relationships to these topics, these focused topics. I equally agree that we should move the APP 10 discussion up. And I'm very concerned about the proliferation of committees that we have, in some cases, been obliged to do, even in spite of asking to streamline them. I do also want to caution that while this is a fantastic kind of syllabus for our year-long coursework, we can't always anticipate what's going to show up. And so these best laid plans could be upended by any number of items. So.
Good point. Absolutely true. And that's why it's labeled potential topics.
Yeah.
Something like COVID, you know, hopefully will not happen, but you don't know. So we have a list of potential topics here. Henry, do you have some comments?
Yes. I think that these things ought to be prioritized in relationship to when decisions have to be made, and when we are actually going to have to do something about them, and also the timeline that's necessary to accomplish some of these tasks. One of those, clearly with a short timeline, is the evaluation of the town manager. And another, that's because it has a short timeline. And another one with a long timeline, but has a lot of work to be done on it, is the 2025 event, which, although it is 4 years off, is a monumental task in many, not only literally, but figuratively. And so I think those two, of course, need to be high in the list of things that we need to spend some time kicking around. And the third one that has a timeline is, of course, the middle school, because although it's not clear to me when we're going to be asked to actually vote on the financing, because they don't even, I mean, they're probably not even going to have construction drawings for probably another year or more. And I assume that they're not going to ask us to vote on the financing of it before they even have bids or construction drawings. But everybody seems to be talking about having that be an early event, and I'm not sure why, but if it is going to be an early event, I mean, it's because it's so big, we need to deal with it, promptly.
Correct. So that's why the top three that I think we need to do right away are the goal setting, the town manager eval, and the middle school. Brainstorm some funding, because if there's going to be a special town meeting in, let's say, December, we need to give folks an idea of what some of the offsets might be to this $100 million so that they know what they can make an educated, informed decision when they go to the polls. Excuse me.
Yeah, but we need to do that also in the context of our capital planning process.
Right. And as far as the 250th, Henry, you're right. I think I'm going to try to add that to next week's agenda to just have us get started on the discussion. And I'll give you a call about that in a day or two. So any other ideas about this? And it's a moving target, as someone said, something could change. I just wanted to see if the board wants to have focused meetings, and if you have some other topics that I haven't included on this list, just let me know. Okay, so let's move on. Thanks, Jeremy. So the liaison list. We have here a draft. Let me just remind people, someone reminded me today that it's not always clear what the liaisons are supposed to do. When I came on, there was some confusion. So the role of the liaison is to be an observer. And I think one of the mistakes that I made, and some others have maybe made, is to get too involved. So you can get overwhelmed that you have so many groups you have to, but we're just observing and reporting back to the select board. And our only other role is if there's a vacancy on their committee, or they have a question about town meeting or a question about the open meeting law or something, we can help them through those kinds of things. But we are not there to be a voting member in most cases on their content. We're just an observer. And the other comment I want to make is that Jane has offered to do a transition with whoever is taking over her old liaison reports. So I think, Susan, you have a number of those, but some other people do too. She definitely wants to be contacted. So with all of that in mind, and also please contact your new committees and tell them that you're the liaison and what your email address is so that you can be on their distribution list and be notified of their meetings. So with all of that in mind, what I want to ask is,
Linda, Terry, I would suggest a very efficient approach, though, would be through the chair's breakfast, to make a general announcement.
I will. I certainly will.
Send a general message out. Yeah.
I certainly will. But
we can do things ad hoc, and we do want to start relationships with the committees, but.
Right.
And we need
Let me just finish that, Henry. That's a great suggestion, Matt. We just have a timing issue right now. The chair's breakfast was supposed to be last week, and we canceled it to give everyone a break after town meeting. So the next one is not until July 21st. So I will certainly be making that announcement, but it's quite a ways till then. And the other thing I want to say is I want to invite your comments. If anybody needs to trade some of your liaison assignments, you're not happy or the timing is bad or whatever, then you should say so now, and we'll be able to continue this for next week. And if everybody is ready to go, then we'll take a vote and agree to them all tonight. So sorry, Henry, go ahead.
I just can Jeremy provide us with a contact list with email addresses for all the committee chairs? It's not really that easy to find out how to get in touch with them. And it would be helpful for many reasons for us to have that kind of contact list for the people who are in charge of the various committees.
Right.
Sure. So there's two things on that. When the final list gets approved, I can send it out to the board and committee chairs, and then I can also put together the list of new chairs for committees, because they're all obviously changing, and send that to the board.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone who needs more time that you have concerns about your assignments, you need to trade something. If no one raises their hand, then I think we're going to go forward tonight and make this our final list.
Well, I already put in a request, but I was superseded by the chair, so I bow to her wishes.
Okay, well, I might reconsider, but I'll talk to you offline about it. Thank you.
I wanted just to point out that I believe the NMI Star Met Reuse Committee is complete in its task. So I don't think it is a active committee at this point.
Oh, thank you, Matt. That actually solves another problem. There are 55 committees that we need liaisons for. And there, before you said that, there were 56. And just, you had 2229, you also ended up with NMI. So what's happened now is everyone has 11 liaisons, and we're all even now. So that worked out really well.
Yeah, and I want to commend you. I think that it was actually a very nice arrangement overall.
Good, I'm glad you like it.
I agree. Good job.
All right,
I didn't get everything I wanted, but hey, you know.
You never do. I mean, that's life, right?
Right. Okay, then.
The only comment I would make about that, if I may, I remember Matt Johnson saying he thought we should have a total rotation, so I'd be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you like my 4 affordable housing committee?
Well, I mean, I think if we did adopt that approach, it would still be helpful over the course of one's term. You would get quite a lot of exposure to stuff. But I also understand, you know, developing relationships and so forth. Yeah. And I actually think that there's a great opportunity in the affinity of various committees, because while liaison is mainly an observer, there's problem solving that you can do, you know, that they can ask for help, and that, like, for example, the Housing Authority is asking about the funding for the Commonwealth unit, and whether it's the CHDC, the Affordable Housing Trust, us, who is the one that's going to decide, you know, because budgets have gone up, what's the limit? Do we do it? When do we do it? All of that. And they're looking for help. So someone that has vision across all the housing is a great thing.
Right. And if, Linda, I knew you thought that, and if anyone had requested the housing groups, I would have been glad to.
I'm mostly giving Matt a hard time here.
Okay. And Matt, for the affinity reason, I gave you both the Trails Committee, which you wanted, and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, because I really think the same liaison needs to do both. And
yeah, that's the kind of idea that, yeah.
Okay.
The minister, we have the Minister of Culture, the Minister of Housing,
Right.
Minister,
Right.
yes.
Okay, great.
So the only other comment I would make, and I'm sure you have an explanation. I remember Elise Woodward asking when she came to the select board meeting and presented their final report and recommendations, whether, did we assume that the task force responsibilities had now ended?
Right.
You know, similar to NMI when the
Right.
task force was.
If I may, right. So that's going to be on next week. We are going to hear from Elise. We're going to decide what to adopt, and then we're going to vote to disband the capital planning task force.
Okay.
But I kept myself on as liaison because
That's fine. I
will
just.
be some implementation issues. So,
Yeah, okay.
okay, great. All right, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this liaison list.
So moved.
Okay.
Move to approve the liaison assignments for
Okay.
FY22.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
I, with the, having noted that Terry might be speaking with me after the offline.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye. That's 4.5 in favor.
Great, 4.5. Okay, that's great. All right, we're right on time here. We're moving on to item 14. Now, what I thought we'd do with this is we take a brief look, maybe 10 minutes or so, on what our goals were last year and how well we did. And I really don't think that we're going to finish that tonight. But I want to set us up for the goal setting session, which will be coming up very soon. So I guess, all right, let's just start by going through each section and see if we can get some of that done tonight. So the first thing is the values and guiding principles. And my only comment, well, actually, I don't want to even make this comment right now. That's for the goal setting session. Let's actually skip that section. Let's start right in with specific to the COVID-19 pandemic. We had 6 goals for that. I think in this group, we did very well this year.
I agree.
And I'd like to hear what other people think about this group. Susan?
In my accounting, I have all goals met for this session.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
agree. I think we
Okay.
accomplished that. And as with a lot of the ones to follow, some of this is still going on because they're not quite out of the woods yet, but I think we
Right.
did a good job.
Yeah, I think we did. I think staff, Stephen had good leadership on this. Staff did really well. Okay, the next group, effective governance, board organization, and communication. I don't think we did this one too well. But before I go into my comments, let me see what you guys have for comments.
I think that a lot of these are not check off the list things, that they're ongoing, like,
Right.
support for the town manager. And I think the only one I had a checklist of accomplished was Junction Village Open Space Committee.
Right.
And the rest are kind of to be continued.
Okay. Other comments on this one?
I would have said that the only one that was purely not done was number 10. So, and we still have next week.
Are you volunteering to do this entire number 10 by next week, Matt?
Well, Stephen, I think you had alluded to something that you were going to bring forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that goal is worded, review the policies. I guess I think it was really work on the wireless, the cell service problem we have is what I interpreted that goal as. And as a reporter, we are in discussions. In fact, I did get some information back from our RF analyst. So I do have some deliverables that I could, that aren't quite ready for prime time, but I have, I think, been inching that forward. So I do think we've touched that base.
Well, that's good to know. Okay, great.
But then I would say in this section for number 1, the evaluation was late. So it was sort of, reduced its effectiveness. And 7 and 8, we developed guidelines, but we didn't consistently implement them. And then in number 4, I was not sure whether we actually seeded the Affordable Housing Trust fully. Did we?
We have one more left, I think.
Yeah, two seats. Yeah.
Yeah. So other than that, I'd say we basically did it. Number 2, we set the goals in light of progress on the long-range plan, but I don't know if we did a full evaluation of the long-range plan. But And so,
Right, like it says, identify and review progress with the town manager at the beginning and end of the fiscal year with regard to this Envision Concord. I'm wondering how realistic that is. I think if it's in here again next year, we should do it. And if we don't think it's realistic, we should take it out. So
I just feel like we consulted the long range plan in coming up with the goals, and I think
Yes.
that can be an offline process. I don't think it has to be some public process.
okay, then we might want to take out that sentence for the future year coming up. Another thing that I had with this section is, and some other sections, what should the select board be doing to help the departments implement some of these things? And that'll be a theme going forward in my head as we look toward the future goals coming for next year. So I'll say more about that then. I think with number 6, promote open and transparent government through enhanced use of technology. Zoom gave us a terrific opportunity, and we did have enhanced participation. But then the next sentence, review the charter of the PEG access. We haven't done that yet. So I think this whole section is kind of mixed. Some of these are ongoing, some we haven't done yet, some we've done well. More comments on this section? Okay, so moving on, the financial stability. I think overall we did pretty well on this. Do we have some comments on this section?
Terry?
Stephen?
We did get our AAA bond rating reaffirmed.
Right.
I think our budget, the budget performance, not only the amended budget, but also the FY22 budget, I think did reflect, we did work with the schools closely and the finance committee closely. So I would say we did this, and then we did accomplish number 3, I think.
Yes. Right. Okay, moving on, balance, equity, and diversity. I think a number of us watched the DEI webinar today from the National League of Cities. I thought we had a mixed review on this whole section. And again, how can the select board help going forward? Those are some of my ideas. Specific comments. Susan,
Yeah, I would say, oh, sorry.
Susan and then Matt.
I'll be interested to hear what Stephen has to say about how that progress, because I think, that's in his area of responsibility to direct that for the town employees. So I'm interested in seeing how that worked with senior staff and whether that can be expanded. But it's really something for every single person, and it's a big deal. And I'm not sure how we would approach it, but I see from this webinar we did today that it was very helpful to me. But I think that there's some crossover where we have to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. But I think the idea of hiring a consultant for the town and starting with the senior management team is a good start.
Right, so we'll be hearing more about that, and then we might be doing a focused meeting on that. Matt, and then Stephen.
Yeah, I would think that for FY21, we set a fairly low bar here. And so I think that we actually did cover off on many of these. The legislature didn't approve our petitions in number 1, but, we had limited control over that.
Right, we did our part, right.
We did our part. Number 4, the housing production plan was deferred, but for good reason, because of the census. And I felt like number 6 was mostly done. The tax fairness update, the support for COVID relief efforts in town, the Hugh Cargill Trust stepping in, I think that was well done overall. And then I thought number 7 was mostly done with Nagog Pond and Article 31, though there's no clear progress on the wastewater plants. So I actually think we did well, but I think it reflects more that we aren't, really going after this as aggressively as perhaps we need to.
Mhm.
So I think one of the things that I guess what I'd say is in terms of one of the major accomplishments of the year that, kind of the lead got buried. Our police department is now fully outfitted with body cameras and dash mounted cameras. In something that really, an agreement that we reached with them to proactively implement those programs, and that is now fully deployed. That story was undertold, and the positive benefits of the body cameras and the dash cams are already being felt in a few de-escalation situations that we have had even in the past couple of weeks, where they've been able to review the video and see that there are that the techniques that our officers use do treat people with dignity and respect, and we do de-escalate volatile situations, and so that's a major accomplishment.
Yes.
And as far as I'm concerned, if that's the only one we got done, that section would still look good. But I do think we made a lot of progress on all the others. The wastewater infrastructure, water, telecommunications, energy, parking, traffic, those have all been, I guess I looked at those in the context of the pandemic, because we had to adjust, modify some of those, and rethink them as a result of the changes that we've seen. No deliverables there, Matt. I think you're right, but I do. In the sustainability thing, we are retaining. I think we just are out to bid now. I think I actually signed off on the consultant contract for the fleet electrification study. But like many things, a lot of work happened on these items, but a lot of effort was stalled by pandemic response. And
Right. Thank you for reminding us about the police cameras. That was a major accomplishment, definitely.
Yeah, there was certainly no short of effort in terms of time trying to work with our legislatures and hearings and testimonies and all kinds of things, and still a lot of work to be done there. But some of that was clearly out of our hands because of COVID. Some of it was out of our hands because of the trajectory of people's potential careers and political aspirations. So, not wanting to take on certain tasks. So, yeah, some of that was out of our hands, despite all our work.
Right. Okay, the next section, maintain Concord's unique character, historic and cultural heritage, agriculture, and natural resources. Comments on this section? Oh, Linda, you're on mute.
Just to get the conversation started, certainly a lot's happened regarding Giroux and White Pond. A lot of work and effort's gone into that. I think what we didn't get to, and there's always things we can't get to, was an integrated approach to land use planning, which I think is even more critical now in terms of capital planning.
Right.
And the middle school, yeah.
Right. That ties in with the theme of how can the select board help to have those departments get more integrated, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Terry, if I may, I agree with Linda. I do think that even though they've been at times controversial, when they are completed, White and Giroux will both enhance accessibility to recreation and conservation resources, to treasured ones. Obviously, we prevailed in NAGOG at the SJC, so that's a gold star item there for us. And then, as we announced at town meeting, the litigation for Estabrook concluded, or at least the trial concluded. And as Henry noted, I do think in terms of the departments, we really have not done much on the 250th. For part of that was some of our key partners. I don't think we're prepared to really get into that either. But I think Henry's right. We really need to get focused on moving forward with that. And I think some of these things, are ongoing. We're always thinking about ways for improving access. The dog issue, we certainly enforced the dog issue up at Estabrook, as was our obligation under the preliminary injunction. But I'm not, I think people need to police themselves on that as well.
Right. Right. A lot of progress on this section. Good. Next section is economic vitality.
I thought that this was mostly done. If you look at number 2, there's a forum on Tuesday, so that's within the fiscal. But I think number 3, we received the NMI StarMet report only fairly late in the fiscal year, and so it's really an FY22 item for us now to look at next steps on there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think generally this was pretty good.
Yeah, I think the transportation, there's a lot to be done. But again, like with many other items, that they're ongoing. They're not one and done kind of things. And the Thoreau Depot Business District. I looked on the town calendar today because it wasn't clear to me, and it said TBA about more information. So
I'll look again to tomorrow.
See. It's June 22nd, but I couldn't find an agenda or where it's if it's virtual. I assume it is, but I don't know.
Oh, I thought it was virtual, and it's 6:30 to 8:30. Yeah,
I had the time from before, but anyway, that's probably operator error.
You have to go to the planning board page or the planning board committee page.
Oh, okay.
And but that doesn't help the public. It should be in news and notices right up, where people can see it right away.
Yeah. Well, I thought it would be on the calendar when you click the meeting in it.
Right.
It's not there either.
Jeremy, could you just check and make sure that it's on the calendar as soon as possible? I think it is, but maybe the agenda isn't posted on.
Yeah, and the link.
The link is not,
The Zoom link, okay. Great, thank you.
Sure, I can see if I can connect it. I didn't post it, but I can see if it's already posted. I can try to connect it to the calendar. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we will have accomplished that goal. No, I actually, and I guess I'd look to Henry to back me up on this a little bit based on the conversation we had at the most recent business partnership meeting. But item number 1 on economic vitality, I feel like, I think I'm proud to have played a small part in supporting what was a really amazing response to the pandemic by the business community in terms of forming new partnerships, creating new events. I talked about the summer solstice thing, and the feedback that we got at the business partnership meeting, I thought was very, very positive. And so just based on that feedback, I think as a community, we were overwhelmingly successful on number 1.
I agree. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all of the input you had into economic vitality and the linkage that you helped provide between the Economic Vitality Committee and Concord together, and helping there be some dialogue amongst all of those players. So thank you.
There's no question that I think the business community very much appreciates the efforts that Steve has made in terms of dealing with some of their issues. But I think that one of the big issues that remains is the one that's not on these goals, but the effort that Marcia has now been tasked with about dealing with the obstacles that exist, and many of them are arbitrary, that exist to business being successful in the town of Concord. And that's a serious one that we have to continue to work on.
Yeah, if I may, Terry,
I just want to say that hold that thought, Henry. When we do the goal setting, we will try to wordsmith that and put that in here. Go ahead, Stephen.
So I just want to say I appreciate the feedback, but really it was very, very much a team effort. The select board was a big part of that team. The work we did on outdoor dining early on and streamlining that process and being supportive of events and things like that. I mean, one of the reasons we were meeting every week was because we were trying new and different things on a lot of fronts, but especially economic vitality. And so, I think the community really came together and rallied in a way that Concord should really be proud of. And the board played a major role in that. But I think the business community also collaborated together. And like I said, myself, Beth Williams, Marcia Rasmussen, and others, and Jeremy Romano, he was really our lead dog on processing those outdoor dining applications. People just worked really well together, and I received feedback from businesses that it made a difference. So it's not what I may have done; it's what we were all a part of.
There were a lot of vacuums to be filled, and as frequently the case, things get done because people see that there's something that needs to be done, and they jump in to do it, regardless of the org chart. And so I think that happened. What the business community did was pretty amazing. And now I think the business community has assumed a much more important role in the town as it needs to, because that's one of the things that distinguishes this town, is the fact that we have a vital community business center, which is a center of gravity for a lot of what happens here.
Right. Okay, thank you. So we need to move on. Is there any comment on the last section, regional and state interests? Because we're going to continue, when we do our goal setting, we can, take another look at these anyway. But that's a lot of progress we just made now. So thanks everybody for your feedback.
Yeah, I would just say in the regional and state interests, we generally got things done, and there were even a few additional items beyond the goals where, like, the regional dispatch center clearly is something that was beyond what was originally imagined, and the regional tourism effort with Lexington and Arlington is on a more minor level. But I have to say, our relationship with the state legislature, I mean, it almost seems like they have it in for us when you think of how horrible the, business with extending the open meeting law exceptions, went. Just the maximum confusion. They do it the day after they expire. And it would be great if we could have one agenda item per year where we are able to actually meet live with our representatives. It doesn't sound like too much to ask, 10-minute time per year.
Right. I think the other towns where I worked, we did that.
Yeah.
The disadvantage was the legislatures, they tended to talk for quite a while, and the 10 minutes became an hour and a half. So that's the only downside to it.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like we got to
we should do it.
Just as things stand right now, I just feel like we're in a different country.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Okay, we need to move on.
I just want to clarify one thing. I think, Matt, I agree with you about the legislature. I just want to clarify that our legislators, Representative Barrett, or Senator Barrett, Representative Gouveia, have been very communicative with us, and they were trying their darndest to move the legislature to help us in a timely way. But as Linda will tell you, when it came down to the end of the legislative session, when we were looking to get some of our last year's home rule petitions pushed through, they worked really hard and were very communicative. So I think on regional interests, we actually had I think we were very successful in this category as well.
Well, we can commiserate then.
All right.
I don't think we could have had two better members in the legislature, the ones we have.
Right. Right. Absolutely. They work very hard for us, and we will have them come in to speak with us at a select board meeting. It's a good idea. Okay, so we need to move on. We have a very important piece of business here to do, which is the town manager evaluation process. We're only going to talk about process today. Jeremy, if you could share a page from item 14 called Town Manager Evaluation Considerations. It's in the packet. While he's getting that up, I'll start talking about it anyway. So in my mind, we have some very important objectives that we have to accomplish as much as we can. We need this evaluation, as all evaluations, to be fair, honest, and objective. And we need to preserve the anonymity of the evaluators. This may have been an issue in the past. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to talk about the objective section. I'll talk about each section and then take your comments and suggestions. So fair, honest, and objective, and preserve anonymity, and comply with the open meeting law. And let's get it done in a timely fashion. Let's try to finish, in 30 or maybe 45 days. And let's make it useful. A lot of evals tend to be just a lot of praise or criticism and fluff. Let's try to be specific and helpful. We need to evaluate how well the manager did on last year's goals and ours, and set new goals for next year. So before I go on, some comments from board members on this section. Is there something I've left out that's important, or something you disagree with?
The only comment I'd make on that is we need to have something will have a broad input from many sectors of the town.
Correct. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the next section. Correct. Okay, I don't see any other comments. Let's go to the next section. So who will be the evaluators? So I have them in 4 groups here. So the first group is the select board from 2020 to 2021. So I would include Jane Hotchkiss in that. She's certainly worked with Stephen all year, has a lot of important input. And I have talked to Jane, and she's perfectly willing to fill out a form and participate. The next type of eval is the self-evaluation from the town manager. Stephen provided this last year, and I think we should ask him to do that again. The third type of feedback is staff, the senior management team, and maybe some division managers and town manager's office. The town manager's office is Jeremy, Chris, Erin Stevens, and Kate Hanley, I think. Last year, we had some trouble getting this feedback, and that's why it's very, very important that we preserve the anonymity. It's very hard to write an eval about your boss. You're either going to be totally positive or you're not going to fill it out at all. I mean, we need to make it, really honest and objective and fair as much as we can. So I'll be saying more about that in a minute. And then the last type of feedback, just as important, is feedback from the public. And this would include, I'm thinking, people like Henry, who have certainly attended many of our meetings. Possibly we should invite the moderator to comment, or the school committee chair or the FinCom chair. And as far as inviting the general public, I think we should invite them to either write a letter to the select board if they want, and that would be a public document. Or if they want to remain anonymous, they can call any one of the 5 of us and just, give feedback on that level. And then when that select board member goes to write your form, you can incorporate their comments if you choose. So let me stop there and see which of these groups you agree with and what other ideas you have. Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, since I had kind of raised the notion of public feedback or input last year, I just wanted to clarify that what I was hoping for is some way to gauge broad-based public input. I mean, certainly while individual public members' comments are welcome, that really, we're trying to serve an entire public, and how, things, there are indirect ways to gauge that, things like the town survey and just the general sense of the public of how well things are running. I realize that it's hard to kind of have something that's like a specific thing just around this evaluation, and I don't think that that's practical. So I just wanted to kind of contextualize that kind of view around the public input. It's really more of how happy is the public,
Right.
and how can we understand that? Because I doubt if people are going to be really specifically focused on the town manager's performance per se. There are certain members of the public who would be, and we hear from them regularly.
Right. So
Maybe we can, maybe.
just so I understand, hold on a minute, Henry. So just so I understand what you're saying, Matt, are you suggesting a specific way that we can get this feedback from the public? Or are you thinking that we just invite the public that they can write to us or call us if
They can, but I just wanted to state that, I really would think that the most valuable public feedback is that collective public feedback.
And how would we get that, though?
Well, I think we did have a town survey recently, right?
Okay.
To analyze the trends there.
All right. So you're saying we would incorporate the town survey into
as one data point. And I'm just trying to think, trying to brainstorm here whether there are other good general data points, but I would try to look for those.
Okay. All right. I think Henry is next, and then Susan.
The problem with that is, of course, we have no baseline really to compare any of that with. So I think that's going to be an open question. How, although we may have the objective to make the process as inclusive as possible, we do have to consider which avenues will be the most productive.
Yeah, well, I also think of the town survey as something that we do biannually. We have several years back. So,
okay, Susan.
Yeah, I agree that the town survey, you can look at the results compared to past results and see if things are trending in a different direction. But I'd be really careful when you start identifying other individuals that you want to include, because if you start saying, well, the school committee, well, what about all the committee? I think it's just tricky. And I think the mechanism of having citizens write or call to individual select board members is preferable to that.
Good point. Because you're saying if you name one committee, you're automatically excluding another committee.
Yeah.
Just invite them in general to.
Right. Or, even, individuals like the moderator or other people outside of that, the select board, and we are the voice of the, we're elected by the community. So I think we are in a position to be able to voice the concerns that we hear. And then the senior man, the people that Stephen supervises, and the people you mentioned, SMT and the division heads and so forth.
Okay.
We already have an established structure through the liaison setup, and that may be a valuable way for the liaison people to have communication with the chairs of the committees that they work with to get some feedback from them. And that would be in a more formalized way.
It's an idea.
Except I'm not,
Oh, Susan, you're.
I'm sorry. I'm just not sure. There's a whole variety of, as we discovered, we have 55 committees, and there's a whole variety of interaction or lack of interaction with the town manager. I'm a little, I want to be cautious about that. I think that it should be people who work directly with them should have the main input, and that citizens certainly through us can express their, and obviously committee heads can, but I'm not sure about the solicitation, because you want to get the same, you'd want to have it be a kind of formal in that I'm asking the same questions to my committees that everyone else is asking to theirs about the process. So I'm not sure we're ready for that without some structure to it.
This is the kind of discussion that is really good, and it gives kind of a preview of what may happen in these in-depth discussion sessions that we may have on issues like this. I think this is the kind of stuff we need to talk about. It's really helpful.
Okay.
I agree.
Any other comments on this section?
So have we asked Amy if she has any ideas about, I agree with.
Yes, we're going to get to Amy in the next section, yes.
Well, just a second. I agree with Matt about, looking at collective feedback and citing the town survey as one indice. And where I was going with my comment about Amy, have we asked her about if she has any ideas about reaching out to the public and how that might be done in a way that's fair and is a collective voice?
Good question. Okay, that's a good segue to the next section. So I did meet with Amy 3 times, and I talked with her on the phone, and she was enormously helpful in all of those meetings. And Linda, yes, that was one of my questions. And Amy was very wise in that she said, I'm the HR director. I will help you figure out how to get feedback from the staff. But my role is not to work with the public. And I would like to keep my role limited to I'm paraphrasing, it's not exactly, but I respect what she said. And so she did not want to give any suggestions about the public or what our form should be really or anything, but she mostly gave some really excellent suggestions about how we can get some very good feedback from the staff and get a high participation rate from the staff. She was enormously helpful, and you see her memo in the packet there. So this next section, there's 2 parts. The first part is the form that the select board is going to use. And then the second part, we'll talk about the staff form. So what I did, I kind of went over this a little bit with Amy, and Jeremy helped me with the formatting of the boxes, which was really helpful. So I took last year's form, and we used that form twice. Once for the 6-month eval and once around the beginning of 2021. And I marked up a few things on that. I guess we've been using this form for many years. And basically I wanted to add, like on page 1 of it, you'll see that we added a section to evaluate how well the town manager met his goals from the previous year. And then on all the other pages, we added kind of a box for including goals for next year. And also what we might do is eliminate sections D and F because staff will be evaluating. These are the two sections that the select board usually, most of us check off NA. We don't know. So one idea is that we could shorten our form and take these sections and put them, most of these questions, into the staff form. And then finally, there might be some items missing. So there's a document called additional items from the challenge statement and candidate profile. And this was Amy's excellent idea that she reminded me when we were hiring a new town manager. There were a number of input sessions where citizens came together and wrote up what they really wanted in an ideal profile. And so the items that Amy drafted in those are taken from the candidate profile and the challenge statements, and they might be good additions to our form. So before I get to the staff form, let me stop and see what comments people have on this attached draft of this form that the select board would be filling out. First of all, is this clear? Maybe it's confusing. Is anybody confused? Because I can certainly understand. Does everybody understand what we're talking about? The red text are tracked changes of proposed changes that I'm making from last year's form. So does anyone have comments on that, those proposed changes?
So if we were to use last year's form, I agree with you that there's two sections that could be pared down greatly. As I looked at those two sections that you were suggesting might be eliminated, there were at least 2 or 3 questions in each of those sections that could be moved to other sections of that form.
Okay.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And also should be included in the staff form. Okay.
And yeah, those other questions are maybe captured already to some extent in the sample form that was provided for staff, or could be added. And this is just a detail. There were 10 references to selectmen. So if that form does get used, that may want to be updated.
Thank you.
To select board. I had also looked at this candidate profile last year that had been used for the search, and I actually like it because that was the basis on which Stephen was hired. And I can see in terms of some of his priorities and where he's been going, he's taken this seriously. So whether we, and there's something about this that backs off and, or takes a sort of a step higher, if you will, in terms of general leadership and management tasks that he's about in terms of his operations and his management leadership. So I actually like this one.
Now, when you say this one, you're talking about the one that's called additional.
The candidate profile. And challenge statement.
Additional questions from the candidate profile and challenge statement?
Yeah.
You like all of the items on that list, Linda, or do you want to send me the ones that you like from there?
Well, I overall, I like the entire document.
Okay.
I agree. I agree about the document.
And this was Amy's idea. She was really very helpful. Well, I can try to incorporate those items into the form and have another draft for next week.
Well, can you just, at least for starters, distribute to the board members that document, the original candidate profile?
It's in the packet.
It is?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's called.
No, but with the responses. I think it was there without any of the responses, just as a form document.
Yeah.
That's right. Each select board member is going to fill out in the email how well we think the town manager has fulfilled that. The boxes are purposely blank now.
No, I know, but it would be helpful to have a copy of the document as it was completed by the town manager in connection with the application for the position.
I don't think that, no. Okay, let me explain what this is, Henry. There was no document like this that the town manager filled out.
Oh, I see.
These items were characteristics of performance objectives that the community wanted in our new town manager. And so Amy took those and put them on the left side and then put all the boxes in that we are going to fill out.
Okay. So we don't have a baseline of what was represented, as it were, initially.
These are like ideal, we always called it kind of the walking on water, Jesus kind of thing. If the community could get, the perfect town manager in the universe, what would it want? And then everyone brainstorms all these characteristics. That's what this list is.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Okay, well, I can understand that because there's a lot of documents in here. Jeremy is screen sharing. Actually, well, that's okay. We can go on. Let's talk about the staff. So Amy.
Oh, have we already discussed the form that we're supposed to fill out and any suggested changes to it?
Right. Okay. So let's finish on that. So Jeremy, can you go to the next page on this? Okay. Keep going. Keep going. This is Amy's memo. Keep going. There. Okay. Keep going. This is the one we were already talking about.
Yeah, that's the SMT. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So then
Let me walk you through this one again. So this page here, I added goals from the previous year. And I just took 1 through 6 right off last year's eval. Jeremy did it for me and he pasted them in here. And then Jeremy, if you go to the next page. Okay, all we did on these pages was we changed the bottom box to strengths and weaknesses and suggested goals for the upcoming year. And up on the top, we added one more gradation of needs improvement. So if you go to the next page, you see every single one of these pages is the same. We just added, we took last year's, we added these changes. You could go to the next page, same thing again. Okay, now this page, this is one of the ones that we might be able to take most or all of these elements off of our form and have the senior staff. For example, number 3, delegates responsibility effectively and appropriately. A lot of us select board members don't necessarily know. If you go to the skip down to 2 more
But
pages.
number 4 on that one, for example, since you were there, could move to another section.
Yes, it could move to one about communications, right?
Which actually there already is one about communications.
Exactly. So now if you go to E, that became F.
So or 6 on that one might.
Right. So we can move them around a little bit, but especially I want to go to this E that became F because I think pretty much the whole section, personnel management, staff people are going to know a lot of this stuff a lot better than us. They are working with Stephen every day. So,
But you could keep number 8.
right.
That could go under general management.
Right. So what I'm saying is I think I can move a lot of this one and the other page we just looked at and shorten our form. And I can have another draft to you for next week's packet.
While you're trying to shorten it, I do have 3 additions that I'd like to suggest, or maybe 2.
I'll tell you what, then, how about anybody who has additions, please email them only to me, not anybody else on the board, and I will incorporate all the additions and all the shortenings. I'm also going to incorporate what Linda recommended from the challenge form. And so I'm going to try to put that all together and have that as another draft for you to look at next week. Just, we can't discuss by email. So just send me what you want me to incorporate or whatever else you want. Mark this up or however you want to do it, and I will put another draft together for next week. Okay. So now if we go back a few pages, Jeremy, see if we can keep going. All right. So this is what Amy was really helpful with. She's saying that we counted up about 35 people. There's about 10 SMT and 25 division managers that work regularly with Stephen. And the instructions say, please only complete this form if you've had regular opportunity to work with the town manager within the past 12 months. So if they haven't, or they don't feel comfortable, they don't think it's anonymous or whatever, they don't have to fill it out. We're not going to know who filled it out and who didn't anyway. And then these things down here, like work effectively with your department, nurture and embrace, establish. These are copied right out of those 2 pages that we just looked at. Literally copied right out of there. And some other items that Amy thought would be good. So this is another one that you guys should probably mark up, send to me, and I'll try to get another draft that has everybody's suggestions all incorporated in. And then Jeremy, if you can go back a few more pages. Let's see, not sure. Okay, I think go forward a page. I'm looking for, there we go. Okay, this is the last part that we have to talk about. Amy is suggesting 4 different options to keep it anonymous for staff, because we heard about problems with this last year and we didn't get the feedback from staff that we needed. So the first option is a Concord designed paper form. It's customizable. It can go in a Dropbox that I would only be the only person to have the key for it. For example, we thought about giving him to Jeremy. We thought about giving him to Amy. We kind of ruled all of those options out. And it just seemed like the chair should be the person who, I mean, you guys may have a totally different idea, and that's fine. The second option is a Survey Monkey. And at first, I didn't think it would be anonymous enough, but I think probably it would be. But it's really up to this board. I would like us to choose one of these options tonight. If we can go to the next page, Jeremy. Oh, nope, skipped a page. There we go. Option number 3. a 360-degree assessment product used by the ICMA. That's the International City Management Association. And I have used this. At least two SMT people have used it. It's a pretty good process. It goes out to someone like University of Georgia. So no one here would know who said what. We would just get back a compiled average. The cost would be $150 to $225. And one of the downsides is that we can't customize our questions. They're going to decide what the questions are. So it's not necessarily designed for what we're looking for, but we probably could get pretty good feedback. And then number 4 is another one of these groups from ICMA called Concord Consulting, and they have nothing to do with Concord. It's very confusing. And they were charged $500 to customize it, and then they will use the questions probably that we give them. I guess we have to negotiate a little bit with them or something. So I don't want to take the time to read through every single one of these pros and cons, but I'm assuming that the board has already read this and that you have opinions about which of these 4 options you think are going to work. So I'd like for us to get a consensus on this tonight if we can.
Let me say this, that at this level, the costs are such that should not even be a consideration, whether it be $100 or $500 or free.
I agree, Henry. We're just, right.
So I think I'm familiar with number 3. And if I recall, having filled one of these out, it was a huge number of questions, and it took a long, long time to answer.
Yeah.
So I think that's unrealistic.
That's a good point. It did take a long time to fill out all those questions. That's right. So that means number 4 might be better. We could shorten it.
But isn't that, I guess I'm confused about if we don't really know what the questions are, why wouldn't we go with number 1? Because we know it. And I'm really interested in ensuring the anonymity of the responses by the staff. So the pre-addressed envelopes, or, if you're it all going to the chair and maybe getting a lockbox sounds like a reasonable idea to me. And the Survey Monkey, again, it should go to the chair, not to the HR director or assistant HR director.
Right, that was a disadvantage of the Survey Monkey.
Can we scroll back to the previous page? Okay.
No, that one.
Yeah.
Right, that is a disadvantage to the Survey Monkey. I have never done Survey Monkey before. I'm sure I could do it. Apparently I need to have an account or a license or something. So there's some setup involved in it. And it's not a big disadvantage, but
I do think that the comment that some staff may not trust that is accurate. Is accurate.
I personally think that number 1 and number 4 are the best because we can customize them. We can make whatever questions we want. We can make them anonymous. And I think they're all really good suggestions, but I think number 1 and 4 are the best. And so number 1 is the paper form. And the only disadvantage is I didn't really think this through, but Amy did. She was thinking about, all right, each staff person is going to have to print it out and then go to the Dropbox and put it in. So it's a little bit inconvenient for them. And, number 4, I think if you want to go down one more page,
They just email you something.
because we talked all about this. Okay, so one of the things that I never thought through, if, let's say there's 10 SMP people and 5 of them email me. Now I know who those 5 people are. So then I can figure out who the other 5 are. Now, I really don't care. I'm going to try to do the averages, but somebody else did care. And so it became a problem.
What about if they just mailed it to you in the US mail to your home?
Yeah, we talked about that too. Well, I didn't really want to give my home address out.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah, we kind of went through a lot of these things.
Well, email is never anonymous, number 1.
Right.
Number 2, if it is sent by a town employee over the town server, it is available to a lot of people who work for the town.
Yeah.
Because
We're
it's
not doing that.
Public record.
There's nothing there's nothing private on on an employer's web server.
Right. So we're definitely not going to be having people email these things. Definitely not. So I think we're down to number 1 or number 4. What's your guys' preference? Let's just pick something so that we can have Amy start working with the staff and we can get moving on these things. Number 1 is the envelopes that go in the Dropbox. Number 2,
Survey Monkey.
Amy and I, no, number 2, we're not going to do that, Survey Monkey. Number 4, we're going to call Concord Consulting and we're going to work with them to customize it and pay them $500.
Well, my question about that is, what would they do differently if we already know the questions? What would they do? What would that add? Their
Good question.
process.
Right, that's a really good question. And the answer is that they are located, it's too bad their name is Concord Consulting. They have nothing to do with the town of Concord. They're located in another state. They would get all the responses and just send us the averages.
They would be an anonymous amalgamator of the responses that presumably would have some credibility on the issue of preserving anonymity.
Right. That's right.
And if you can buy that for $500, it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm seeing the value of that. I think that the anonymity is a key aspect of it. And if that ensures that we'll get a better response rate, I think it's worth it too.
So the paperless submittal would have to be explored in terms of, are we right back to the same issues we have with Monkey Survey?
No, because if you email something to me, I'm going to see the email address, and a citizen can request, a public records request and all that kind of stuff. But if somebody emails to University of Georgia or someplace, I don't think they'll be able to figure out who's who that way. Does that make sense?
So it's either a town server again issue or their own computer.
Personal.
Yeah, personal.
We may have to explore some of the details, but I think we're getting pretty close to figuring it out.
Okay, so we need to figure out about the town server with number 4. Okay, so here's,
Matt's got his hand up. Yeah.
oh, sorry, I can see that.
Sorry, that was left over.
Oh,
Okay, all right, here's what I think we're gonna do. Jeremy, I think we're all set with the screen share. Thanks so much. Good, now I can see if someone raises their hand. Okay, so I'm going to work with Amy. We're gonna find out if there's any town server issue with anonymity with number 4. And we're going to call Concord Consulting and start negotiating with them what they can do for $500. Can we write our own questions? And we're going to make sure we can do all of that. So by next week, we're going to continue this discussion because we're going to have a much better draft for the board to look at with all of your suggestions collated in it. And we'll have the answers to this staff process. Thank you very much for that pretty in-depth conversation that we really needed to have. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to number 16. We would like to have a motion from the clerk for nominations.
You're on mute, Matt.
We don't need a motion for the nominations.
Oh, thank you. We're on number 17.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, first we just note the nominations. So there were Deborah Adelman of 1 Abbott Lane to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee for a term to expire on April 30th, 2024. Ann Sussman of 534 Old Marlborough Road to the West Concord Advisory Committee for a term to expire on April 30th, 2024. And Melinda Shumway of 365 Garfield Road to the Historic Districts Commission for a term to expire on January 1st, 2026. Okay, now we can move to appointments.
Thank you.
And I move to appoint Jack Clymer of 13 River Street to the Tax Relief Committee for a term to expire on April 30th, 2024.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Escobedo,
aye.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is liaison reports. Now, it is 8:07 p.m. So I'm going to ask, does anybody have anything burning that has to be discussed now? Otherwise, we'll probably put it off till next week. Susan.
I just want to reiterate what we spoke about earlier about the planning board hosting a forum tomorrow night about the Thoreau District zoning, potential zoning changes.
Thank you.
I would mention for the library committee that their annual book sale will be on September 11th, and that they are looking for at least 1 and perhaps 2 people to fill vacancies on their board. And I have suggested that they put out green cards on the circulation desk at the library.
Thank you.
Let me just add about committee vacancies. The Board of Assessors is looking for a member, and the Council on Aging is looking for 1 full and 2 associate members. That's it.
Okay. And we will have a more in-depth liaison report hopefully next week. Okay, miscellaneous correspondence. We have letters from the West Union Concord Church and the First Parish Church supporting the women voters' call for a DEI commission. And thank you for those letters. As you can see, we have it on our list for focus topics. We're going to be talking about that in the next few months. We also have a letter from Tanya Galis requesting public access for all in-person meetings. Thank you, Tanya. And now we're ready for public comment. Tanya.
Yes, here. Thank you for a very thoughtful, wonderful meeting. So I have 3 things to say. I only had 2.
Tanya, excuse me, state your address.
Yes, Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road. Thank you. There was a comment by Mr. Dane about having an ending time for meetings. So I wanted to, this is my lightest comment. I just wanted to make sure that if you practice that option, that you always leave room for public comments at the end, even if. My second comment is about the your discussions about the town manager evaluation, anonymity versus non-anonymity. And I had the honor of participating in this League of Women Voters open meeting law first Friday. And as far as the anonymity of staff or the public or anyone else who is not on the select board, that is protected by law. It is in Chapter 30A, Section 22E, where it says that all documents used in a public meeting are public record except for materials used in a performance evaluation, provided they were not created by the members of the body. So anonymity might be good anyway, but if a staff member or I or somebody else wrote you a letter about anyone's evaluation, that would not be public record. Yours, on the other hand, would be. And so yours can't be private. Yours would need to be discussed in a public meeting if they concern the professional performance and qualities of somebody. If it is about other personal issues, that is executive session. So I wanted to sort of save you a little worry there about the anonymity concern. The other thing is my broken record reformatory branch trail. Perry, you mentioned it in terms of under the transportation focus committee meeting, if that happens. It is just that the reformatory branch trail has not even been taken up by the select board at all, and it has not really been formally taken up by the transportation advisory committee, which is just beginning to establish a bicycling subcommittee. And that bicycling subcommittee does not have a charge decided first, as far as I know. And as you know, we are not even sure about the status of the transportation advisory committee yet. So I felt that it was a little premature for you to make a declaration of that as an issue. I know that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee chairs have sent a letter, but then we also know that since then we have seen that there was more to the history of that, and that it's a very Bedford-connected effort, and it is not really from a within Concord kind of effort. So I just felt that that was premature. So that was the other thing I wanted to say. I guess one of the most important here is knowing about the protected anonymity of people who can write about your evaluations. Evaluations of the town manager or any other official. So they are already protected, but yours is not. The public still needs to see yours. So thank you very much. Excellent.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you very much. Hi, Mark. Any other public comment?
Terry?
Pamela.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green, Unit 3. A couple of questions. Can you still record the in-person meetings so that citizens who can't attend in person could look them up? It's sort of like body cameras on police. The minutes vary a lot in their completeness and so on, and what is summarized. So it would really be helpful to us. Also, can the warrant presentations also be available before the town meeting and not only on town meeting? It would allow us citizens to know whether or not we need to go to the town meeting if we have a better idea of what the warrants are so that we can be prepared. And I think a lot of the speed of town meeting was because that was available. I know a lot of people couldn't do it, but those who really cared would. I
Right.
did.
So there is a warrant explaining what will be at town meeting. Then there's a public hearing.
Uh-huh.
And then also there's a question of whether we're going to have public presentations at the town meeting.
So we would get to see the presentations at the warrant meeting ahead of time?
I think you should talk with the moderator, but basically the warrant will print showing all the articles that are going to be taken up at the town meeting.
Yes.
The presentations given at the public hearings are the
Right.
comprehensive presentations. The presentations now, we haven't had presentations at town meetings since I've been here, but I know from talking to staff that the presentations given on the floor of town meeting are just shortened versions of the public hearing presentations.
Right.
Thank you. And one last, will next week's meeting be in person only? No participation via Zoom? That's really hard for a lot of citizens. It was really nice to be able to attend meetings via Zoom. I think that.
Okay. Stephen, do you want to answer
Yeah,
that?
no, we as I sit here now, our intent is to have it via Zoom or have it available via Zoom. All I'm saying is there are limitations people are gonna have to get used to with that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The quality might be, give us a chance and we'll try to get it as good as we can get it.
I have faith. Thank you
Okay.
so much for all of your good hard work.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Johnson, aye. So meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody, for putting up with that very long meeting. Appreciate it. Got a lot done.
Yeah, thanks,
you.
Terry.